Welcome. Today is Tuesday, March the 15th, 2022. This is the Pickens County Board of County Commissioners work session. And I would like my board members to know who are zooming in, which is Kelly McNicholas Curry, Steve Child, Greg Poshman. Francie will be joining us at 2 o'clock. She is recusing herself from the discussion regarding the appointment of the new Pickens County interim clerk and recorder. But Grassroots will not be streaming this live because City Council's moratorium hearing is currently ongoing, and they are streaming live with Grassroots. They also have people who are calling in and participating for public comment in that meeting. So we have moved our meeting to YouTube or Zoom, and then we will rebroadcast it later in total. So that being said, I'm going to bring us back to today's agenda items. The first item on our agenda is a resolution appointing, I need to call a special meeting to order. And this is a special meeting to hear a resolution appointing an interim Pickens County clerk and recorder and our applicant discussion. So I'm going to open it to the board. I think staff, Melissa, was kind enough to send on to us a synopsis of the references for two of the candidates. JP Straight did not provide references, and I ran into JP the other day in town, and I think he is moving on in job applications. He's still an applicant. He has technically not withdrawn, but I talked to him about some possibilities with employment in other areas of Pickens County, so he's going to be keeping an eye on our help wanted ads and what we put online as far as job openings. So does any one of the members of the board want to open this discussion?
Did you need to call a special meeting? Need a motion, or?
No, I can just call the special meeting. Kelly, did you want to open the discussion, please?
I have some just questions. I'm unclear of what our role is from now until next January, subsequent to this process.
I'm going to look at John Peacock for clarification.
So, Kelly, I may need a little more clarification on your question, but do you mean in terms of overseeing clerk's office, or?
Yeah, I do. And, I don't think this will happen, but in any egregious personnel violation or something, what is our role in any of that?
Yeah, so my understanding is once you appoint the clerk, the appointed clerk assumes all the statutory duties, responsibilities, and authority of the clerk's office. In the Home Rule Charter, our elected officials are bound to follow our adopted personnel policies. And so if there were any personnel issues, we would be addressing those through personnel. The one exception to that is the appointed or elected clerk, who really would be held to a standard in statute for malfeasance of office.
Okay. And so just to clarify a little bit more, what I think I'm hearing is we are not taking on the responsibility of, all of the duties of that office simply in this interim period through the hire. So the functioning of motor vehicle, the success of the elections, those are not by de facto coming into BOCC responsibility because we choose the interim clerk. They all continue to reside with that clerk.
That is correct. Yeah, they assume the responsibilities and authority of the clerk position. Your authority really ends at that appointment, and then the adoption of personnel policies and such.
And I want to further clarify that too, Kelly, to ask about if one of the candidates who's currently the deputy clerk was to be appointed as the interim clerk and recorder, her position would be vacant, and it would be up to her then, or to decide who fills that position, or if that position is filled on a permanent basis or on an interim basis until the election and the January new clerk and recorder, the elected clerk and recorder would just be a step in.
That is correct, and it's a little bit of a dilemma, as you can imagine, being able to fill that on a temporary basis, or leaving it vacant, or filling it permanently, and waiting on the outcomes of the election.
But we could make ourselves available to whoever that new interim clerk is for discussion or consulting with us or whatever. We could still be available if that new interim clerk wished to discuss things with the BOCC.
Absolutely. So that is, if the appointed clerk were to request assistance, that could come at the board level. It could come through staff. Staff does work closely with all our elected officials, and we generally have a good relationship there too.
We want to make sure we have that support system in line. Okay, thanks, Kelly. Great question. Steve or Greg, would you like to make comments?
I think we're waiting to hear what other people say first, but Kelly had to say. I've been weighing lots of issues, and let me just go through some of the issues that are tossing back and forth in my mind and confusing me to some extent. One issue is that it's my general philosophy that when we can appoint someone from within a department and promote them, that is a really good thing to do for employee morale. The fact that, they know that they can advance in the department and perhaps become the department head is important, I think, for employee morale. So that totally plays in, comes into effect here with only one applicant being, working in the clerk and recorder's office. Another thing that, I've gotten some feedback that employees in the clerk and recorder's offices are supporting, they would like Ingrid to be our choice for the clerk and recorder. And I presume they would know her very well, working in the same room with her. And so I put a lot of emphasis on what her fellow employees are feeling about her. I've also sensed that she has had some disagreements with Janice over on some issues. I don't know what they were, but that Janice is not entirely happy with Ingrid. And so then I maybe some of the others that are more privy to some of that discussion, but I'd be curious to hear your viewpoint on that. Then moving to the whole issue of the general election. Of course, we are just appointing the interim person here. And if we appointed, whoever we appoint would kind of give them a little bit of an inside edge, but I would think that since Ingrid is the one who has received the Democratic designation on the upcoming election, if we appointed her, it would be like she would be virtually a shoo-in to be elected next fall for the permanent position. So that, that puts weight on our shoulders to take that into account, that, we might be skewing the election next fall by our choice here. If we chose Robin to be the interim clerk, and if Robin, I don't know if Robin's going to apply for the, one way or the other, if she is going to apply to run in the election as an unaffiliated or undesignated person. all that weighs in my mind, like the dynamics of that and how important it is that we make, we think about the different aspects of why we are appointing somebody. And then the final thing, just looking on the face value of it, we only have one person who has been working in the clerk's office, is familiar with many or all aspects of the operation of the clerk's office. And it would be crazy to not appoint her, Ingrid, as the interim, because she's the one with the experience and going into 2 elections coming up in the next, less than a year, and doing this transition, having someone who's already been there is, to me, really important. And Ingrid's the only one that fills that bill. But I really liked Robin's, kind of her presence on her interview, that she is, I think, an outstanding individual. And I think if she were the clerk, she'd have a huge learning curve going into it, but I think she could be the best clerk in the over the long haul. But since she hasn't worked in the clerk's office, she would have to learn virtually everything from scratch. So those are some of my thoughts why my mind is going back and forth and not being fully decided at this point.
Okay, Greg, please.
Great, thanks, Patty. Thank you, and Steve. I appreciate you articulating that. You basically said what I was trying to figure out how to say, and you put it in a nice order and form, very succinctly. Yeah, the concern is that we find the best person to serve the public here through this role. It's an important role. We've got 9 months to find someone who's going to probably be elected and then work with us for the next 4 years, making sure we have safe elections and a well-run department. It would be, I guess I have to say, my first thought when I heard about this is that I do support hiring from within, because I think it's just so difficult for an outsider to step into a job, any job really, and immediately get it. There's some real startup time and learning curve as is needed. And I don't know if perhaps we have the luxury of that amount of time, but it doesn't really feel like it to me. So but that said, I think that enough questions about Ingrid have come up that I feel as if we need some guide rails, and I'm trying to figure out how that would work. It will be up to the public to elect our next clerk, but the public isn't going to be informed unless there is some sort of scrutiny or oversight beyond what we've probably had to date, and I don't know how that would be constructed, and I don't know what the protocol would be. I'd like to see either one of these candidates be our clerk, but I also think this is important enough that people need to be paying attention here. So that's where I am right now. Haven't decided yet. I'm eager for the rest of the conversation.
Thanks. Kelly, did you want to tag on, or do you want me to go?
I'll defer to your preference as chair.
Okay, I will jump in here. I'm really grateful that we had 3 candidates. I appreciate JP's jumping into the fray. I think that was very brave. As we talked about during the interviews, the role of a county clerk and recorder these days is not easy. It's under great scrutiny from local to state to regional and beyond, as we've seen in some of our counties here in Colorado. Not sure it's a job I would want to be jumping into at this point, and especially with the primary election and gubernatorial election coming up, the general election in November. Pickens County has a great history of running extremely efficient and clean and transparent elections, and that is of greatest importance for me, and I think for all of us, that we continue in that mode. And so I think that's going to be a key issue coming up for whomever is appointed to this interim position. I do want to say that I don't necessarily agree that the person we appoint is going to necessarily have a leg up. Granted, they will be in the public eye, but on the other hand, the person who isn't appointed will have a lot of time to be campaigning, and we all know that campaigning is all-consuming, and especially, I think, in today's environment of elections and campaign elections, and what you need to do and what you should not be doing. So I think, if anything, Robin's interview was exceptional. She was very articulate. She has a great presence about her. I think she is up to the task to learn anything. And I think would be a great benefit to Pickens County. I am, in that being said, whatever happens, wherever this board decides to vote in this special meeting, I hope that Robin or Ingrid continue to pursue the campaign, be on the ballot in November, and may the best woman win at the end of the day. The voters will be then able to decide who moves on for the next 4 years as our elected clerk and recorder. A very important position, very, very important position. So I am in listening and seeing the staff references and notes that we have received publicly from the staff as to their feelings about who is in this interim position. I'm going to be supporting Ingrid to take this interim position. That again being said, I want Robin to know that I look forward to seeing Robin working hard on a campaign and being on the ballot in November. I think she's in it's, to me, I don't know, the same if not better position to pull off an election than Ingrid, because Robin will be able to focus on a campaign. I think it would be very difficult to focus on being the interim clerk and recorder with 2 elections, just around the corner, the primary and the general. I don't know how much time that would give somebody to also throw in on the side, having to run a campaign and being successful. So again, I look forward to seeing in November that the best woman, in this case, wins and pulls off a very successful campaign. So that's where I am standing. I haven't voted yet. That's where I am standing on this position as of right now. So, Greg, your hand is back up.
Oh, I never took it down, but since it's up, I'll talk. I guess I'm inclined to agree with you, Patty. I think the questions that remain for me, that since we're not running interviews at this point, my biggest concern is that our interim clerk can show the strength needed to stand up to the all the voices we've alluded to. There have been some contentious and there have been threats. There's contentious voices. There are people who will try to subvert the process, and I don't think we have the same level of that sort of activity here in our county, but it definitely happens. And what I want to make sure is we've got the individual who's able to stand up and follow the rules that the state has laid out to the letter of the law, and convince us that this is, as you've said, the cleanest, most efficient, transparent elections that we have become accustomed to in our county. But I have to say, I think that I'm certainly inclined toward voting for Ingrid at this point. And yes, I would like to see Robin run.
Kelly, please.
Sure, thanks. And I appreciate the deliberation everybody is showing up with on this, because it's not a shoo-in, and it's really tough. And I feel like when I'm trying to be objective about these things, I look at both Robin and Ingrid, and in many ways, I think Robin may be more skilled, but Ingrid most definitely has more knowledge in these departments, and they're both very capable. I think, one of the things that Ingrid will probably have to wrestle with in her campaign on this is, she's been the deputy for 4 years and has had the opportunity to learn the election like super intimately over that time. When I look at the prior deputy clerk, she knew everything about the election. I feel like you could, like the whole, she could have been the last person in the office and still ran the election on everyone's behalf. And I don't feel like Ingrid has leaned into learning all of that and taking on that responsibility as the deputy. So, now's her chance. 4 years of opportunity have passed, but now's the time, I think, to do that. And, we'll see. And I hope Robin, I'm inclined to support Ingrid because of just her ability to focus on singularly learning, the elections in the interim and then taking on motor vehicle, et cetera. But I do hope that Robin will run because I think she has a lot of strengths as well. So that is where I'm at. And yeah, I think we're lucky we can see success down both paths.
Great. Thank you, Kelly. I'm just going to add another thing that I meant to add and forgot. Regardless, not regardless, actually, in light of the fact I think we're leaning at supporting Ingrid, I just want to hope that our outgoing, most amazing clerk and recorder, Janice Voss-Cadil, will continue to help us support Ingrid, if Ingrid is chosen, in this transition period and with the elections coming up. I think that's important. If Ingrid would seek that support, I know the Board of Commissioners is supportive of Janice helping out, would like to see Janice in some capacity help out, and I think that would be in the best interest of the people of Pitkin County, and especially the Pitkin County voters as we're coming up on election season. So I'm just going to put that kind of plea out there that we can move forward in that positive direction, supporting each other in the best interest of the community as a whole. So, Steve, did you have anything else you wanted to add? Okay, we can't hear you. Steve, you're on mute.
I couldn't find my cursor. Greg's hand is still up. Greg, or do you owe us donuts or?
He leaves it up so I can call on him at any time.
I know there's so many donuts that will expire. I apologize. Steve, you had something to say. Do we need to just wanted to process. Do we have to make a motion here?
We need a motion and a second. I have a resolution in front of me. Would you like me to read it? I don't think the board has it in front of them. Greg, you want me to read it? It's just simple couple of paragraphs. This is a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners of Pitkin County appointing, there's a blank, as an interim Pitkin County clerk and recorder to serve the remainder of the term of Janice Voss-Cadil. Whereas pursuant to section 2.8.4, parentheses, actions of the Pitkin County Home Rule Charter, all matters not required to be acted upon by ordinance or formal resolution may be acted upon by informal resolution. And whereas Janice Voss-Cadil has submitted her resignation of the position of Pitkin County Clerk and Recorder effective April 1st, 2022, and whereas Section 5.52 of the Home Rule Charter states any vacancy in the office of Clerk and Recorder shall be filled by appointment of an eligible person by a majority vote of the Board of County Commissioners, and any person so appointed shall serve the remainder of his or her predecessor, term, and whereas the Board of County Commissioners held interviews of 3 candidates on March 8th, 2022, and whereas the Board of County Commissioners met on March 15th, 2022 to further discuss the appointment, and whereas the Board of County Commissioners by a majority vote has selected blank as the interim clerk and recorder with full powers of the office to serve the remainder of the term of Ms. Caudill. And whereas the board finds that it is in the best interest of the citizens of Pickens County to approve this resolution. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of County Commissioners of Pickens County, Colorado, that it hereby adopts a resolution appointing blank as the interim clerk and recorder to serve the remainder of the term of Janice Vascadil, and authorizes the chair to sign the resolution, and upon the satisfaction of the county attorney as to form, execute any other associated documents necessary to complete this matter. Adopted at a special meeting on March 15, 2022. So that's the resolution I have before me, thanks to Jeanette Jones getting me a copy of this morning. So if the board is ready, I can ask for a motion and a second and we can vote, or if the board would like more discussion, please let me know and raise your hands and I will let you speak. Steve, please.
Well, I definitely have leaned towards voting for Ingrid. I too was really impressed with Robin's interview, and if I would hope that she would put her hat in the ring for the election in November and campaign for the clerk's position. In the meantime, she could be studying up on clerk and recorder's issues, which they're in the news a lot across the state. It's like a very public position, and I would urge Robin to be in the campaign and to bring issues up and present herself, because I think she has a lot to offer. I wish we could give them both some kind of a position right now. But I will support Ingrid for our interim clerk and recorder.
Okay, is Greg?
If that was a motion, I'll second it.
Steve, was that a motion?
I will make that a motion to appoint Ingrid as our interim clerk and recorder.
That's Ingrid Gruder. Okay, Greg, you have a second, so I have a motion,
Yeah,
I
I'll
have a
second
second.
that. Yeah.
And do I have further discussion? Seeing none? Okay, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? No, motion passes 4-0. And I want to make note for the public, this is the first time in I don't know how many years the Board of Commissioners has been responsible for appointing an interim elected. And I think the last time, may have been,
I think it was Janice, actually, wasn't it? 16 years
Janice
ago?
came in, and before that, there was Leslie Lamont who came in and filled a term, and maybe Mick before that, and so there's been some, but it's the first time I remember having to do so myself, so after many years. So this is a very serious decision that we've had to make, and I know that we have spent time on our own thinking about it, and I think we've reached a good unanimous conclusion. And again, I encourage both Robin and Ingrid to pursue election by the people of Pickens County in November to fill this position for the next 4 years, starting in January. So thank you all very much, and I will fill out this resolution and get it filed into the public record. All right. We are going to move forward. We don't have Francie with us. Can you send Francie a? Yeah, Steve?
Yeah, go ahead. No, I'm okay.
We're going to send Francie a little note letting her know that we are moving on, and she is welcome to join us.
We're ending the special meeting. Do we have to do anything?
No, we just have to
particular?
close the special meeting. I don't think I need to take a vote. We can just close it. We are next, we are going to be doing an interview with Graham Means. He's reapplying for Open Space and Trails. I don't know if Graham is with us yet.
I think he is not scheduled till 2.
So we can go to review of future agendas, if you would like, if the board would like to continue on. We do have an early end date today at 4 o'clock. which means we have time, a lot of time for board reports and open discussion. So I'm going to look to John, and you sent Francie a.
Yeah,
Okay, so I expect Francie to be joining us. Thank you, Melissa. And I'll get this resolution filled out and get it to Jeanette. Thank you. Oh, Francie's not going to be attending this afternoon
Oh, she's not.
at all.
Okay.
Okay? So that means we can move forward. So we have future agendas, John.
Okay. So I just have one item on future agendas for the board, and it's we're actually scheduled to do our board retreat on April 15th, and we reserved the mine shaft room. We're going to do that. It's right before elections takes it over.
Basement downstairs?
Yep.
That's for our.
Garden level downstairs.
Excuse me, garden level. Okay?
And that's really all I had for you on future agendas.
Okay, we were asked today in, John, just a heads up, in the Open Space and Trails meeting to set some time. Will you work with Gary on setting another joint meeting with Open Space and Trails? It'll be executive session on one item. Okay, I've got that on my list. Does the board have any future agendas?
Patty, just wanted to confirm when the next STR discussion, the third
Our
continuation of the second hearing
Third
on
reading is
STRs
the
will come back on
13th of April, I think. Is that our
April
next
13th.
regular meeting? Yeah. And it
Thanks.
that should be on that agenda, I'm hoping. Good point. Let's make sure it is. We have reserved time for that day. I don't see it on there. So, John, we need to make sure we add that. That's kind
Yeah,
of
it's
critical.
on April 13th.
Yeah, it's not on there right now. We have the Highlands Bavaria's are only in, I don't see. And Greg, of note too, on that meeting on the 13th, I will be recusing under the Pandora's restrictive covenant. So I will have to be stepping up. Francie will have to step in and run that section of the meeting. I will make sure she knows that. Anything else the board wants? Kelly, please.
Yeah, so I wanted to check in with you all and get some input. I've been invited to participate in a meeting with sort of the Colorado governmental affairs people for Airbnb. And they have procured an economics, they're working, they have hired outside counsel to work on an economic study looking at 5 resort counties, including Pickens County, about the effects of short-term rentals on the housing market. And they're sort of looking for, county commissioner input on that. And the meeting they've scheduled is next Tuesday from 2 to 3:30, which overlaps our agenda. And Francie will be gone. So it would leave the 3 of you, if I were to leave at 2 and attend that. There's some citizen interviews, so I could submit questions to Patty ahead of time and then watch those interviews after the fact in order to accommodate. But I wanted to check in and see if there was any problem with that.
I'm okay with it. I think it's good to have you there. And we can probably handle it without you here.
But we may close the gate on her too early for her to go up Maroon Creek, so you better give me some comments on that one. Yeah, and we do have a library board interview. I think that's for the Basalt Library Board. Is that for Basalt, do you know? Because I know Basalt Library has an opening.
I do not know which one
Okay.
that is, actually.
But that's on my open discussion. Yeah, so Kelly, I think that's fine. And Francie, who knows, sometimes she tries to call in from Mexico. I know she's going to be calling in later, hopefully for the regular meeting on the 23rd. So, yeah, so Kelly, go ahead and plan that. And then it'd be great for you to give us an update before as soon as you have good things to update us on. All right, thanks for bringing that up. Does anybody else have questions about future agendas? No, okay, so John? we can move on to, do you want to go ahead and we'll start board reports?
Hey, bring those till 2 o'clock and. see if
Yeah,
we-
and then we'll stop board reports when we see Graham either in person. I know he was here today for the Open Space and Trails executive session, so he may show up in person today, which would be nice to see him again. So I'll start off real quick. ACRA is doing a presentation to City Council on their destination management plan. We have not, John, they have not contacted us for time, have they?
For the destination yes, they have,
presentation?
and so we're working on
Okay.
scheduling that.
'Cause-
Yeah.
Perfect, because I know the city had it scheduled and then rescheduled and then rescheduled. So just to let the board know that'll be coming, because I know that ACRA's been reaching out to people to attend the city council meeting, but we will be having a meeting and I'll have ACRA reach out to people who did not get to the city meeting and want to join us when we have our presentation. So that's where we go. Economic Development in Northwest Cog have a meeting coming up Thursday, the 24th. I'm going to see if there's any plans for the Economic Development District to hold, they do these great little sessions that they plan over, usually in Silverthorne. I don't know if we've got one planned in May. If so, I'll let the board know because they usually have great speakers and great topics, a lot around housing and economic, of course, economic issues, but it'd be great to see what comes forward in light of COVID. And then the Intermountain TPR, so far, I know that the city is trying to get their name in the list for some funds designated for the entrance to Aspen. I haven't talked to Brian or Dave about either one of those yet, but we are still trying to come up with projects that the county can have shovel-ready, and on the shelf, I should say, for new CDOT monies that might be coming forward that we might have an interest in for projects other than the underpass at Owl Creek and Highway 82 at Buttermilk. So that's about where we stand there. Francie is not here to do her update, so Kelly, would you like to give us an APCHA update, please?
Yeah, so the conversation at APSHA has been, we're just sort of carrying it over multiple meetings related to right sizing. And really what that is trying to think about is getting, using up all the rooms that we have available and figuring out if there are ways to incentivize people who have more rooms in their unit than they need or use, either due to family compositional changes or children growing up and moving on and things like that. So the conversation is really starting around, are there some incentives that might entice people who have bigger units to move to smaller units that do not require a financial incentive? And so some of those may be, are they more age friendly? Are they newer construction? Are they dog friendly? Things like that. There's a lot that we are juggling in this conversation because we're concerned about how the churn kind of puts pressure on certain types of units in the system. So for example, if we're trying to incentivize everybody to move into 1 or 2 bedroom units, that creates more competition for singles and, couples trying to also get in the system. And we regularly see that these smaller units have higher numbers of bidding happening on those. So it's just sort of what pressure are we creating? And then who are we benefiting? Because the real benefit tends to be if you're opening up a bigger unit, then that means you have to qualify for that bigger unit. So that's incentivizing families and kind of favoring them over folks who do not have families. So those are some of the things that we are wrestling with. And then, there's questions about how do you deal with when you look at sort of an older couple, ostensibly they will have the most amount of savings that they are going to have in their life. So are they beyond the asset cap that a unit they might move down into would otherwise allow them to have. And we don't want to disincentivize savings, but we also don't want to move people from, $1 million units into $200,000 units as well. So we're just trying to think through these, and APSHA is going to be starting with some surveying, and then the plan is to do more focus group types of stuff to really figure out what might work, and perhaps pilot some interest in this where we would people would get a advantage in the lottery if they were moving down from like same quality to same, or same category to same category in a smaller unit. But we would want to spread those out, because if you give everybody that incentive all at the same time, then it really blocks out someone who may be bidding all the time trying to get into a unit from having that additional opportunity. So hopefully that's clear. You can see we're sort of working through these things. As everything with APSHA, you sort of pull a thread, and it kind of has impacts elsewhere in the system, and conflicting goals. And so we're trying to work all that out and see if there's a way to test it that would give us meaningful information as well, prior to developing incentives that then would have a financial component to it. And some of those incentives are, again, just paying someone a financial incentive, or covering things like moving expenses. That someone who's lived in their unit for 20 years plus and maybe is elderly, like can't take that on themselves, and might be a barrier to them wanting to move.
So Kelly, can I add to that? I received a call from someone with an idea about right sizing. For somebody who has owned a unit, like you said, for many years, he and his wife, and they're both retired, and they would like to downsize into a rental, say just a 1-bedroom rental. So if they could sell their existing unit for say $400,000 or $500,000, or somewhere in that market area, 3 to 5, be able to retain those monies to live off in their retirement, but live in a rental, be an opportunity for them then to turn over, open up their multiple bedroom place in town for ownership. So that was something that came up, and I thought I'm going to throw one more thread into that mix of possible discussion items. So I know we're trying to be really creative in this and look at as many case scenarios as possible, which is not always easy to do. So thanks.
Yeah, just getting a hand. Yeah, it's such a big question. Is there an incentive to get people just out, like to move people out of the system altogether? Someone who maybe, is right at that level where they might be able to afford something, but are scared about taking the risk, or so.
Yeah. Okay, great. So then you want to move on to CCI?
Sure. Yeah. And without having all my CCI stuff in front of me, let me see if I can remember things off the top of the head. So the big bill that has dropped in the last week is the Behavioral Health Administration bill. And so as you all remember, Colorado has last in the nation on mental health services. And so Governor Polis 2 years ago set up a behavioral health task force, who wrote a blueprint, who, then had an interim task force on $450 million from federal stimulus funding dedicated towards behavioral health. And now here's the legislation to set up the Behavioral Health Administration, which will be its own department, and the implementing legislation and changes to programs on that. So that's a big thing. I will say, I'm sure John Peacock's listening, I'm trying to tease out if any of this work addresses licensing requirements for smaller rural counties, because one of the big pushes there is being able to expand the workforce in more flexible ways so that counties can develop better services and facilities as one of the goals. So I don't know what the details are on that, but that is what's working through for that. What else is happening at CCI? lodging tax bill passed. We do not have a county lodging tax. If we were to consider one, we would have more flexibility in how to spend that money. It used to be that you could only spend it on marketing. And now the uses have expanded to where you can go to your voters and ask to dedicate a portion of that money towards housing. So that's a big win on that one. I know there's more going on, but I'm drawing a bit of a blank.
Well, Kelly, let me ask you, is there any way
Yeah.
to tie that 450 million going into behavioral services, behavioral issues, into the justice system, which is also one of your areas down there, for actually the construction of, say, a regional facility for behavioral health as part of what's occurring in our justice system?
Yeah, that it gets wrapped in there. They refer to it as jail-based behavioral health services. So those that are being directly connected and offered in the corrections system, but also have to do with mental health and substance abuse treatment.
Okay.
So so that gets covered in there.
That might give us an opportunity to seek some funds if we decide we want to look at a regional Western Slope jail-related or multiple-use behavioral facility, which we don't really have over here, and we're in a wait line for Pueblo for years in some cases. Okay, perfect. So then that brings you to CCAT.
Yeah. So CCAT is working heavily on the behavioral health stuff and also on a lot of wildfire legislation that is being considered in this session. And again, I'm sorry, I should pull up some of those details. They are also working on the short-term rental bill that I've discussed with you guys about data access and transparency and enforcement levers, which would be really helpful if we could pass that. And then finally, the affordable housing monies. And I think the bill on that, on those monies, the $450 million of stimulus money for housing will become forthcoming. And the big wins there again are a revolving loan fund that that nonprofit developers could take advantage of, and then grants to local governments and nonprofits as well.
Okay, great.
So, yeah.
Okay, and the last one for you is the Colorado River Basin.
I don't have any other updates from the last one that I gave.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to ask the board, we have 10 minutes to 2. We're waiting for Graham. Would the board like to, rather than go on with Steve and Greg, take a little 10-minute break now? And then, because then Graham will be on with us. Kelly, you're...
Sorry, I would be remiss if I didn't also acknowledge that there is the conversation related to collective bargaining happening, which would give county employees and university employees the right to form unions and engage in collective bargaining. And so there is, I don't know if we want to have a more in-depth conversation about that as a board, if we are concerned. Right now, the push is I think that the governor wants to see something similar to what is set up at the state level. There's some concerns about municipalities are fighting to be exempted from that. So it's been narrowed to just be county governments and higher education. And then there's debate about whether all departments can strike, or if there's a carve out for like emergency services. And that's what I know right now about that conversation. But I do think we probably should find some time to have a more detailed discussion about it, or, if John and Melissa Knight feel like they need input from us on it, in case it is forthcoming, because it sounds like there is support to move something forward that would apply to counties.
I'm going to write that down in my little not black book about future agendas, because I think that's something we should probably have a discussion, especially I think we need to look at how municipalities got themselves exempted and why that would not pertain also to counties. Okay. So should we take a little break here until Graham joins us, and then we'll skip our break following Graham's interview and go right back to Steve and Greg for their updates? Okay?
I could squeeze mine in, but if you want a break, I can happily take
Yeah,
the
let's
break.
go ahead and take the break now while Graham's here and
Okay.
everybody's getting set up. So Grassroots will be back at 2 o'clock. No, at what time is it? 2 o'clock. That clock is wrong. All right, thank you. So we need to get that clock changed because it's really. Welcome back. This is the Pickens County Board of County Commissioners work session for Tuesday, March 15th. This is a continuance of our earlier meeting. We are proud to be here today to interview a reapplication of Graham Means to Open Space and Trails Board, which, as everyone knows, is a very important board, as are all of our volunteer boards in Pickens County. So, Graham, I'm going to start this off by giving you a few minutes to introduce yourself to those of us who already know you. Okay. And just to give a little presentation as to why you want to be reappointed to the Open Space and Trails Board.
Okay. I'm Graham Means. I've been here since 1971, a long time.
Wow, 10 years more than me.
Been an architect based in town here. I've got a family. I live in Meadowood, just out near the hospital. I've got a wife and two great sons, both of whom are in the valley here, which is just awesome to me. I am an avid user of all our outdoor amenities, whether they're trails or backcountry biking, skiing, all of that, so I have a great interest in that. I'm going to say that there's one reason why I would like to continue on with this work. There's a number of reasons, but there's one that's just more important in my mind than the others, and that is the environmental piece. A couple of weeks ago, there was a UN report that global warming was happening faster than they thought, and these reports seem to come out every couple of months. And we've been getting these global warming and environmental messages for about 30 years. And Pickens County Open Space and Trails has been working on this issue for over 25. And in my mind, one of the very best ways to counter the environmental problems that we have, whether they're global warming or species extinction or water quality, air quality, soil, is preservation of relatively intact pieces of land. And so that environmental piece of what open space does is super important to me. And I would say, you know, if I'm sitting in an open space meeting on a powder day, I know I'm in the right place, sitting in that seat. So that's one.
That's why those meetings are very short those days.
That's one reason. Like I said, I enjoy all the trails. I Nordic ski, I bike, I hike, I do all of that. So I think I'm very familiar with the trail system and the trail issues. I see the potential crowding or not crowding and things like that. So I think I can bring some knowledge of the trails. In my career as an architect, I've worked on a lot of historical buildings. I worked on the Aspen Community Church, which won 2 City of Aspen HPC Design Awards, and other residential historic structures, and turned the Merle Barn into a museum for the Historical Society. So I have a background in buildings and in historic buildings, and I think we have now 7 buildings that we've sort of acquired, and I think I can be in a help. We have 2 really important historical projects ongoing, and I think I can be a help there. I don't have technical expertise, but I've got a strong interest in the sustainable ag program. I really appreciate, and that's, you know, not that old, and it's developing, and it's had some great successes, and that's important. I think what I can bring now, since having been on the board, is experience and knowing the players. And part of that, part of the attraction to me is just the whole culture. I think that our board has really great group dynamics. I think we really work together. We respect each other. I say the same thing about the staff and the same thing about the relationship with the Board of County Commissioners. So, you know, I know the players, and I really I like that culture. So that's something that's important to me. So those are some of the reasons why I'm here.
Perfect. So I'm going to open this up to board questions and comments. Greg, please.
Thank you. I'm going to lower my hand now, so you won't all wonder how many donuts I owe.
He has a standing raised hand.
Thanks, Graham. I was pretty much on board there, but then when you mentioned you'd rather be in a meeting than skiing on a powder day, I began to question your judgment. So we'll have to drill down. Let's drill down on that on the chairlift. My question is, and I've been on these boards now with you, and I've watched you in action. We've all worked together, and I agree with you. I think the Open Space Board is really great, and I appreciated even we had a conversation earlier today in exec session, and I appreciated the ability of that board to argue and disagree in the way that argument should be made. You know, an argument, the word argument should not be a negative word, really, and I can see that respectful conversation, respectful arguments happening, and to the benefit of all. And so I think you nailed it on that. My question for you is, how do you make the tough calls? How do you ascertain what's important for preservation when you have to decide between worthy projects and limited funds? You know, I'd just love to hear more about your thought process. When, you know, I've heard you speak when some projects have come up. You've spoken against bringing them on for reasons that I didn't understand, and so I'm trying to, without being specific about any of them at this point, I would just love to understand how you conclude whether something's worthy or not.
First of all, on the process, I think it's important, first of all, to read the packet thoroughly, understand what's in the packet, and formulate some questions for the debate in the meeting, and form an initial opinion, and then getting into the meeting, listening to the debate, having some patience before you come up with what your final determination or decision or whatever might be. To me, and I stress this as in the beginning, is the environmental piece is very important to me, and I really look forward to the biodiversity project, because I think that will really help us to be able to focus our energies. Where do we put a trail? Do we put a trail? Things like that. Where should a wildlife crossing cross 82? What kind of lands, where should we target? And that kind of thing. So the environmental piece of it is important to me, and the scenic is important. We all need to feel a sense that we're not living in a congested area. But a wilder landscape just has more appeal to me, I guess, to try to focus in on your question.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Thank you. Good answer.
Okay. Greg, are you done?
Yep.
Okay, Kelly, please, and then Steve.
Hi, Graham. Thanks for your service over the many years, and I've appreciated getting to know you and our dialogue. And I know you and I have sort of shared some of the same, I think, points of view on some of the projects we've looked at. I guess I have two questions for you. One, if you care to share where your favorite trail is. So it's like, and then two, is there anything you wish we were doing differently? or that our approach to open space is being handled differently?
Well, a lot of my favorite trails, yeah, I'm not going to talk about, but there's one trail, and that's the Rio Grande Trail, which Open Space in the 90s, I think, participated on. And that is just an amazing amenity in a lot of ways, whether it's recreational or commuter, visitors, locals, whatever, and the Rio Grande Gorge that kind of goes along with it. So, you know, that trail is just an amazing amenity. And your second question was?
Do you wish that we were doing things any differently in the open program?
You know, I thought about that in the application form, and I was really gratified that I don't have a lot of suggestions. I think one might be, as the program accumulates more and more properties, maintenance becomes more and more important. And I think it's a challenge going forward. It'll always be a little more of a challenge to keep our eye on the environmental parts of it. It's sometimes easy to, there's a squeaky wheel, you got to grease this, you got to do that. And that's where I think, again, the biodiversity project can really focus our energies. And it's kind of interesting to think, I think there are like 16 or 17 employees in Pickens County Open Space and Trails, and there's only really one dedicated to searching out opportunities for new projects and things like that. And I'm not saying that that's out of balance, but I think we need to keep a balance of where we are pursuing new projects and not get too caught up. And again, I'm not trying to criticize on that score, but I think it'll be more challenging as we move ahead.
Okay. Okay. Steve, did you have some questions for Graham here?
Yeah, Graham, and I just wanted to tell you, whether you knew or not, you do have competition for your reappointment. There is another applicant who we haven't interviewed yet. So you are really on the hot seat today. The Maroon Creek and Castle Creek roads are kind of trails in Pickens County that are fairly heavily used by people on bicycles. And do you have any insight, since you live there by, Meadowood, you're kind of at the base of both of those roads, and you probably use both of those roads quite frequently. And do you have any insights into how you would come up with solutions for the bicycle traffic and the bike motor vehicle conflicts on those, which the solution might be building a new trail alongside, or it might be putting bike lanes in on the existing pavement or something. What insights do you have on that, Graham?
Well, again, I think it's important to get into these things and study them and get information before you really make a decision. But, Maroon Creek and Castle Creek are in some ways very similar, but in other ways they're very different in that Maroon Creek has controlled vehicular access. And I think that makes a tremendous difference. I think that bikes can be much better accommodated there because you can control the traffic, and I think the bus drivers are pretty educated about bikes. And so I think, especially with e-bikes, I think there's a lot of opportunities to keep the recreational bike thing happening there. I think Castle Creek is more difficult. It's a rural road. I ride that on my road bike. That's my ride. I ride that. I'm right at the bottom. I ride it 3 times a week. And so I know it well. I'm not convinced that a bike trail along the side of the road would be a great idea for a number of reasons. One is it would be enormously expensive. I think it would be environmentally a problem, and road bikers often want to ride on the road, especially coming down. I just don't think a bike trail would get used, to be honest with you. Whether the road could be widened a little bit or not, I don't know. I think you also have to look at it from the point of view of that it's a transportation corridor, there are cars on it, and I think if you do too many improvements to it, I think the cars are just going to go faster. I like the more rural kind of feeling of the road, and I know there's a lot of issues there, and I don't pretend to have a solution. But I understand the problem because I drive it and ride it. And again, I've learned the importance of gathering all the information and getting public input on these kind of things, because I might have my opinion, but I've learned on the board that you really need to have patience with the public process and get the wider view and not have a solution come from just your own priorities.
Okay, and Gary, I think you had a point of clarification for us.
I do. We learned that the other applicant for the position was actually in the wrong district. So you do not have another applicant right now.
So that leads me to the question, is the application process closed for open space and trails? Do we know?
I believe it is. Charlotte, I believe it is. Charlotte had another commitment, but I believe that
Yes,
the
it closed.
time frame has passed.
It's closed.
Yeah, it closed last week.
So we have no other applications for Graham's district on open space and trails.
Correct.
So I'm just trying to lead it to the board could make a decision today.
It's up to you guys.
So we're stuck with Graham for another 5 years. Is that what you're saying? That would be a shame.
Is it 5 years?
I'm not stuck with you, though.
Is it a 5-year term? Is it 5 years? Is it 5
Yeah,
years?
each term, yes, the way the open space
5
board,
years?
yes, it's 5-year terms staggered. Every,
God, your sentence longer than we are. We
It's
like
up to
that.
you.
We like that.
Up to you.
Okay, Graham, it's always been a pleasure. I think you're right about the makeup of the current board. They don't always agree, which I like, but they respectfully present their own opinions and come up with really good end results, I think. And everybody has a commitment to protecting what we love so much about this valley. And I think it's pretty terrific that we do what we do. And thanks to you for helping get the board there. We appreciate it. So unless there's no more questions, you'll be officially notified by someone from the county as to your being reappointed to this position.
Thank you. And if I do get reappointed, I genuinely look forward to working with all of you.
Great.
So,
Great. We're not letting you go just yet, so, no, we are today, but maybe not for 5 years. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks, Graham.
Graham.
Okay, so since I'm gonna jump on this, since I have the board here, and we are able to direct staff to create a resolution that would be coming forward at our next regular meeting, are we in favor of moving that forward to appoint Graham by formal resolution? Okay, so can we direct
No.
Charlotte to create that? Okay, perfect. So before we move on, I just really quick, John, wanted to bring up some things I forgot at for future agendas. We, just real quick, at the regular meeting on the 23rd, I'm going to have Jeanette Jones present to the board a little explanation. Jeanette and Julia have come up with a kind of a different process for our lease approvals. And I just want her to explain to you how that process is going to work. We have a special consent item now just for leases for first reading. And so Jeanette will come forward and bring that to the board. And then I need to know for the EOTC meeting, who's going to be attending in person and who will be virtual. Kelly, will you be traveling on the 24th? And Francie, you will be in Mexico on the 24th?
I'll be virtual.
Okay, so Steve and Greg and I will be local and virtual, or I will be at the meeting in person on the 24th.
So I am doing a back-to-back with the Club 20 meeting in Grand Junction, which I am attending virtually. And I don't know the timing of when that ends on Thursday afternoon, but I will be here in the Valley, and if I'm able to be there in person, I will be.
Okay, because EOTC starts at 4. I have Northwest Cog EDD from like 9 to 3:30, but I will be available to start the EOTC meeting at 4. I just want to make sure that we have at least 3 of us in attendance at 4 o'clock to start that meeting. The other thing
Yeah, I
is,
have,
yeah,
Sorry.
I may be virtual on that.
okay, just
I'm-
as long as I know I'll have 3 faces at 4 o'clock. The
yeah,
other
Patty,
is,
I have Wolf meetings all day, but they're supposed to be over at 3, so
Okay.
I'm planning on switching over.
that would be great, Francie, thank you. And the Bavarian Inn, the historic site visit up Castle Creek, has anybody, staff was supposed to reach out and try and set up the site visits. Francie, have you heard anything?
It was from you, I thought, that I got a text or
Jeanette
an
has
email
reached
that
out.
said.
Jeanette?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll
the
send
site
in some
visit?
dates.
Jeanette Jones has reached out for the site visit? Okay, so just so we know, because we need to have that done by the 13th. So hopefully, staff will be getting back to you and we can get that organized. All right, that's all I had on open discussions. Now I'm going to get back to Steve for board updates, and I have John Ely here also. He's going to do his River District update in person. But Steve, please, go ahead.
Okay, on CCI, there's my areas, there's nothing huge in the 3 committees, but there is a bill that reached the governor's desk. It was passed by the legislature regarding dissolution of special districts, which could affect the county at some point in time if we have a special district which is inoperable and sort of defunct. This gives a mechanism for the county commissioners to disband that special district. So it's on the governor's desk, probably will be signed. There is a bill that would have allowed bars to stay open until 4 a.m., which I think is a serious mistake there. CCI is opposed to this bill. It's been amended now, so it will still keep the 2 a.m. closing time, but it will allow bars to open at 5 in the morning still at this point in time. So that could have, some serious impacts on our law enforcement capabilities. If bars started opening at 5 in the morning, I think that wouldn't be a good thing.
Hey, we could have great agenda meetings then, Steve.
There is a bill, House Bill 1282, that has to do with spending of the ARPA money for housing solutions. And so the House Bill 1282 is Innovative Housing Solutions, and it covers one of the 7 areas that ARPA funding could be used for on housing solutions. And so that's one that, CCI is seeking amendments on it. It's not a perfect one, but it has a lot. The innovative housing is kind of like modular housing construction, which they can make lots of houses, but then does it meet the, our energy code and our building code things is part of the question. Let's see, in other bills, on my other areas, this would have to do with SAPCA, the modernization of the Older Coloradans Act is on the governor's desk. It passed through with some amendments, and I think the amendments were all friendly ones and good amendments. So as it stands now, SAPCA, the committee I am on, will end on June 30th. We are planning a conference of SAPCA and Colorado Commission on Aging members on probably June 20th. It will be our final meeting together and kind of a reunion of old people formerly on the SAPCA committee. And just so you know, Chad Petrovich is on the Colorado Commission on Aging. Their positions will also terminate, but then the state will be creating a new Colorado Commission on Aging, which is kind of a merger of the two groups. And so I think Chad would probably have a good opportunity to be reappointed to the new commission as a representative representing gerontology or, public services for the senior population. Let's see. Club 20 is having their spring meeting next week, actually, and it's earlier than it is normally. And normally they have that in April. So they're having the business meeting on Wednesday, starting at 11 in the morning, which I will be able to attend the first part of an hour virtually, but then I will come to our board meeting next Wednesday. But then on Thursday and Friday, they are having an event. It's called Before the Fire, Protecting the Water Towers of the West.
Right.
So it's a, I think it's been widely advertised, and I think will be a very good conference. And I'm going to stay here and just attend it virtually. I think that Lisa McDonald and Lisa Tasker are planning on attending that in person. And if anyone else is interested, I think it will be a very good and interesting conference about wildfire issues in the West.
Steve, maybe that would be an opportunity to have Lisa, I'm looking at John Ely, come back to the board at some point and give us a briefing on lessons learned as part of that conference, to share with the board anything that they think is. I'll put a note to ask Lisa about that.
It's an excellent idea.
Yeah. I think we could really gain some good insights and knowledge and, practical guidance on some issues there. Let's see, the senior council is having a meeting tomorrow, and part of this meeting will be the senior services department is undergoing an external evaluation. It's like a periodic evaluation. So they have an outside consultant doing the reviews, and part of the meeting tomorrow, the outside consultant will be there and the senior services staff will leave the meeting and be interviewing senior council members about their perception of the senior services here in Pickens County. So that should be interesting to hear what the consultant comes up with, if there are any recommendations. We all feel that the staff is doing a really good job given the circumstances of the pandemic and having to be closed so much of the time. But that we'll see what the results. I'll bring those results to you. Well, I'm sure Chad would too in our quarterly health and social services report. And I think that is all I've got. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to switch over to Greg, please. Thanks, Steve.
Okay, here we are. Let's see, starting with CC4CA. I'm just going through the notes. The big news was just the major win on the oil and gas conservation financial assurance rules, where well drillers will be required to put up a useful amount for reclamation of wells, ranging up to $140,000 per well, depending on the size of the operator. It's a financial assurance plan that will cover plugging and reclaiming. This was, this came in, thankfully, after, I don't know how many decades of simply not having enough resources to take care of the damage done. So that's been a big win on the climate front in Colorado. Steve, I wanted to say, I wanted to learn more about the housing thing you mentioned, just regarding housing standards for housing. I'm hoping that if any new housing standards come in, they certainly are climate conscious and energy efficient. And, as we push to build more housing, we simply have to do it the right way. Otherwise, I think we'll be going backwards. The other thing on the climate front, it's not from CC4CA, but it's from the SEC. And the SEC today announced that they're going to be demanding reports. Let me see if I can find this quickly enough, because it's important stuff. The SEC has set up a historic climate disclosure rule requiring publicly traded companies to disclose their greenhouse gas emissions and the risks that climate change poses to their businesses. That's a huge change on a stance on the SEC, and I think it's a good one. And it's coming from boards of directors membership demanding and stockholders demanding that they become accountable for climate. So that's CC4CA for now. There have been some opportunities for testifying. If anybody's interested in following up on that, I think I'm going to pivot next to what else? What's next on my?
Core
What else do I do here?
Core is next on yours.
Yes, thank you.
I'll work you through it.
I was looking at it. Core we have a board meeting Thursday. And Core is moving along well. Our interim director is doing a great job, really rebuilding the way Core works. And we'll be coming back to the board soon once we decide how we're going to move forward with it regarding, I guess the model we're moving toward is fee for service for Core, where Core really produces a result for a fee. As we're moving away and seeing REMP funds decline, the business model needs to change, and that's what has been determined by the board. And so that's going to be changing the way the board makeup as a nonprofit. Core will be looking for new board members, actually, from around the community, and I think some exciting changes are afoot. The other really great news is that we got the funding for the Coal Basin. As you may have heard by now already, the federal funding came in for the $1.2 million grant, which will go to Core for really sinking our teeth into locating and determining how we can address the methane leaks in Coal Basin. So that's all really good news on the climate front there. Moving right along, should I go to Board of Health?
If you're at Northwest Cog QQ, if you had
Oh,
a
QQ. Oh, let me go to my QQ. QQ meeting this last week was great. There were some interesting things. Grand County presented their plan for drought, fire and drought awareness. And it's really a great plan. They've on a fairly small budget relative to the budgets we have for things like that. They've come up with a great way to alert the public and inform the public about drought. And I've asked that they share that with us. And I think we could look at that. I know the city of Aspen also has a plan, which they're going to be publishing, and we're going to see that soon as well. But that was one highlight for me, was just seeing that, a lot could be done with a little, regarding hotel, room posters and cards on tables in restaurants, all about using water and the consequences of this drought that we're in. Let's see what else I have here on QQ. I'm going to stop there for now.
Okay,
You
now
wanna
you go
learn
to
more?
Board of Health.
Now I can go to Board of Health. Board of Health, what was really wonderful about the Board of Health this time is that we actually had an opportunity to talk less about COVID and more about mental health and the surveys, the behavioral health, mental health surveys that have gone out into the community. And that was actually refreshing and reminded us of the efforts that we'd started before COVID. And we're going to hear more about that. I think the conclusion is we have a lot of great mental health resources in our community, but they're not always particularly well organized. There's so many disparate groups doing different things, and often it's easy to miss that. And a lot of people in the community don't even understand what they have available to them. But in the light of that, I know there's a super high demand, and what we're, as we've all heard, the ambient stress level and mental well-being level is a big subject right now in the community. And what the survey results were pretty fascinating. First of all, was that it's really hard to find a mental health practitioner in our community, and we're doing well compared to most. And that when you do find one, only maybe 25% of them take insurance, and the rest work on cash and carry. They do have a sliding scale, most of them, where you can negotiate what you'll pay, but it's not something that insurance will cover, or at least they won't take it. So we have some problems with the system there, and I think that the plan for the staff at this point going forward was to start understanding how we might coordinate the various groups to work better together, and then hopefully we'll start solving some of these problems around insurance. There was that. Another interesting thing on that, in the Latino respondents to the survey, I think there are only 50, the sample was only 50 in the community. In the Latinx community, housing wasn't their biggest issue for mental health, it was personal health. And I thought that was an interesting, because everywhere else, housing was right up there at the top. Personal health seemed to be a bigger issue. So maybe they just interpreted the question differently. They're going to be drilling down on that, and we'll be learning more. So that was our introduction at the Board of Health meeting, was to open up the issues around behavioral, mental health concerns in our community. So Patty, you mentioned trying to see if we can, find federal funding to do a facility. I think you're right on there, and I think we'd actually have a lot of people in the community supporting that. I'm going to move on to RAFTA. RAFTA is doing well. Everything's going smoothly. The BOCC downtowner, whatever it's called, system is up and running, and they're already getting a lot of ridership. They'll be watching that to see how well that works. It's like our downtowner in Aspen, and RAFT has been supporting that. We talked about bike sharing and the first and last mile with expanding WeCycle. The one issue I wanted to flag with RAFT is I know they have some new advertising plans, and that involve putting like a billboard-sized pictures of the driver on the side of the bus. It's an advertisement to try to get more drivers, because RAFT really needs drivers. But they're approaching full billboard size ads, and somehow it took a little while to resonate with me, but I'm from a community that has fought billboards for a long time, and seeing them on the side of big buses and trucks is really no different than seeing them on the side of the road for me. I don't know if any of you want to weigh in on that, but I'm wondering if they could be a little bit more discreet in the search for drivers than 10-foot tall billboard sized pictures of drivers on the sides of the buses.
Greg, we had that discussion many years ago just to raise revenue for RAFTA, and Dorothea Ferris was pretty adamant about not doing that because it was pretty much the reasons you just stated. So you just might want to remind RAFTA that we've been there, done that, and it didn't go anywhere.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's good. I can imagine Dorothea having that same response that I did. Rawapa has some interesting, of course I missed the Rawapa retreat because it was at the same time as the Board of Health meeting last time around. And so I have not caught up with Rawapa yet, but I did know that they were discussing expanded activities at Rawapa, and I don't know where that went with the board. So bear with me, I'll come back to you on that. Workforce investment, BLM and Forest Service, nothing from the first two. When we received the notification of the $1.2 million federal grant, it's amazing how quickly I got calls from the Forest Service saying, "Hey, what are you going to do with this money?" It was kind of interesting that Kevin Warner called and wrote me that very morning to say, "We better talk about this. What are you guys planning to do?" Because I think he was concerned that we were going to get the cart before the horse, which would be, doing something with shovels and bulldozers in Coal Basin before we have the approval of the Forest Service. So they've been assured that that isn't the case, but a meeting has been scheduled so that that Kevin Warner and Forest Service can see the work plan for Coal Basin. And that's going to it's going to involve aerial photography and sniffing of methane. It's going to involve, measuring and getting the details so that they can actually design a program off-site and even employ some of the technologies at Somerset as an experiment and pilot before going into Coal Basin. So I think the impression we're going to get is that we won't be setting foot to actually do any sort of construction or work in Coal Basin that would require disturbance of the soils from the Forest Service perspective, probably until 2023. But there's a lot of work to do in the meantime. So okay. That's what's happening with the Forest Service and Corps in that regard. And that's all I've got for you today. Right. Sorry it took so long.
So Francie, I see that you're back at our meeting, but John Ely is sitting here. So I'm going to let John go, and then I'll circle back around to your board reports. So okay. Mr. Ely.
Hi.
Hi.
Is this on now?
Is he on? If it's red, it's on.
See, I'm just out of practice. Pretty trippy sitting here, I gotta tell you. I don't know when we shut down. Pretty close to 2 years ago. Yeah. I haven't been in here for a board meeting for 2 years. That's crazy. Well, pretty comfortable, though.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
Like old jeans.
Yeah. Comfortable.
Okay, the River District. The River District item du jour, or for the month report, is legislative updates, if you will. The River District spends quite a bit of time during the legislative session following bills related in any regard at all to water rights, water administration, and the state. And this year, for the first time, in fact, the only time I can remember, the regular every other week meeting routine has largely been canceled. I'm not quite sure why there is such a dearth of water legislation pending this year, this session. It's interesting. But there was one bill that got a lot of attention and was covered a bit in the press, and that is Senate Bill 29. And that was co-sponsored by our own Senator Kerry Donovan. And it had to do with water investment speculation, and actually the prohibition of water investment speculation. So the idea being that when somebody comes in who does not have any real intent or desire to utilize a water right or the property that's pertinent to that water right, but is acquiring the water right or the interest in the water right purely for speculation, which is to say to be able to sell it and to gain a lot of money in doing so to some other consumer. And typically that other consumer these days is either going to be an energy interest or a large metropolitan interest. That type of activity, when identified, would be prohibited and subject to a $10,000 fine. So the bill was lacking in almost everything, and I think admittedly so even from the sponsors. And everybody on the River District board was against this particular bill, whether they were looking at it from the left or looking at it from the right. It really wasn't satisfying to anybody. But the reason I'm mentioning it now is that this discussion is far from over, and it will be back in one form or another. It pits a competing West Slope passions, the preservation of private property rights against the desire to keep West Slope water on the West Slope. And the two are most decidedly mutually exclusive. If you want to allow free alienation of water rights, they will travel off the West Slope. It's an interesting problem, and as I said, it has been discussed for a while. This is just one particular bill in this particular legislative session that has come out trying to address it and fallen quite a bit short, but the dialogue won't stop. The problem that is increasing the discussion of this issue is that there is a large amount of money continually being invested in water issues. It's usually done through mutual investment funds, not necessarily a mutual fund as we are commonly recognizing a mutual fund, but a mutual investment vehicle which seeks to pool a large degree of money to invest in commodities. And one of the commodities that is targeted currently by many of these investment vehicles is water. And if you look at water, and you're not making new water through desal plants or cloud seeding or something else, in fact, that's all really that you could probably point your finger at, you're really looking to reallocate the resource. And if you look around at where the resource is present and where it's really needed, you can't help but look at the West Slope of Colorado. And the investment activity by these types of funds that has been evident so far has been in the acquisition of water rights themselves or the land that is pertinent to the water rights to obtain the ability to control those water rights. And should a compact call come on, or if a need is pressing, say an exacerbated drought in Southern California, then this type of investment vehicle is poised to take advantage of that and to translate that water interest from the West Slope of Colorado to some other consumer, either downriver, down the Colorado River to SoCal or Arizona, or across the mountains to the Front Range of our own state. It's a fascinating problem. I have to say, I think that we here in Pickens County are probably, in fact, decidedly positioned better than other locations, and that's primarily due to our active open space and trails program. Probably the public doesn't or isn't aware of how the county procures conservation easements on large properties, but part of that exercise is to not only protect the land from development and preserve either an agricultural quality or perhaps just an open vista, but it is to keep the land or keep the water pertinent to the land on the land. In other words, you cannot sell the land and the water separately once we have a conservation interest on the property. This acts to keep the water here. We have actually taken that requirement a step further and require that the water right be actively used. And in so requiring that, we hope to avoid any potential abandonment of the water right and a relinquishing of the water right and the ability to use that water in Pitkin County, not through a sales transaction, but just through abandonment. And in fact, if the water right is not actively used and maintained, the county has the right in most instances to enter the property and maintain that water right. And I've advocated that approach to other folks on the West Slope for many years, but I am unaware of other communities doing it as extensively as we have. And if you look at the way the rivers flow and the geographic and political boundaries are established, I'd have to say the communities at most risk would be those near the Utah border. If you look at Fruita or Junction or up the Gunnison River into in Delta County and Montrose County, those properties there, if acquired, and simply dried up, there is no water court process that would be necessary. The water would simply go to Utah and satisfy the upper basin call and down to Lee's Ferry to satisfy the lower basin call. which means that the Front Range would pay dearly to have that occur to avoid any curtailment of their junior water rights to divert across the mountains. Anyway, I find that kind of interesting, and I think it's important that the board be aware of it and the public at large be aware of it because things certainly will not stay the same in the future.
Yeah, I myself would like to see the bill come back in a better form then, because we've had that issue, say, in Lake County with buy and dries, and with down, in Mesa and Gunnison County, in Garfield County with Shell Oil buying up so many water rights that nobody even knew they were buying and to use for fracking. So I think we need to keep an eye on that definitely, and hopefully we can get a better drafted bill to come forward. The board
Well,
have any comments, or, yeah, go ahead, John.
Well, speaking of COVID, a great COVID movie back in the day to watch was The Big Short, and everybody knows that movie probably. It's it describes investment into selling short futures on how the housing market was over-leveraged and so forth and so on, and how you make money off of a disaster. And that same money is being managed by the same individuals now in the commodity market again, and their primary focus, if you look at the postscript at the end of that movie, is water. There's hundreds of millions of dollars chasing water.
The new gold in the West,
Yeah.
or the continuing gold in the West.
Right?
Does the board have any comments, or I'm going to move to Francie, who's joined us. Steve, please.
John, has the River District discussed the Douglas County efforts to get groundwater from the San Luis Valley and pump it to Douglas County?
It has come up, but only very superficially. It has not been discussed widely, and the River District Board has not taken a position one way or the other on it yet.
Okay, thanks, Steve. So Francie, I'm going to let you sum it up, and then we're kind of back on schedule. John, in the future, we need to schedule more than 15 minutes for board updates. Thank you. So Francie, please.
Mine'll be very short. I can't even tell you how many times to go to the CCI things on Friday. I don't know whether by search, whatever it is, I could not find the agendas, and I've looked again even this morning, so I'd be ready, but I couldn't find them. So I'm sorry I don't have an update on CCI. I missed the meetings. However, I am off the Basalt Vista board. We all are. They are now independent.
Oh,
of the
wow, that
Pickens
happened
County.
quickly.
Yes, it did. I made it for the last few minutes of my last and first meeting. And Gail was there. She was great. So anyway, that is the end of our direct involvement with Basalt Vista. They're on their own and doing fine. They got 2 new board members from their homeowners, and everybody was pretty happy about that. I thought I would take just a quick second here to catch you up on where we are, what we're discussing now with the wolves. I know it's not a board appointment, but I thought you might be interested. It's very short. We are looking at what metrics to use in order to delist the wolves at some point. I'm sure you're all aware that they were relisted on the endangered species list, except for Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, parts of Utah, and Oregon, I think. But they've always been listed in Colorado. And but at some point, hopefully, we'll have a stable enough population that they'll be able to be delisted. So we're looking at what metrics to use for that, whether it's just the numbers of wolves in the state, or possibly whether it's by unit. We have 5 units, I believe, on the western slope. So that's one point of discussion that is fairly new. And then I'll be joining them by Zoom next week from Mexico, and I will have more for you then about the wolves. We have not yet discussed where they're going, so that is still out there.
Great, thank you, Francie. Is there anything else from board, or can we move to, John, we have a few minutes before we start the COVID video thing.
Kelly's got her hand.
Oh, Kelly, please, sorry, I was looking at John.
Okay. I guess I would just comment, Francie, that I guess my inclination would be that they manage by unit, because when it comes to culls, they look at culls by unit. So it might just be something to keep in mind.
Okay, good to hear.
And Kelly?
I have a quick,
Yeah, real quick.
really quick question.
Go ahead.
Are we meeting with planning and zoning at 4:00?
No, we're not. I don't
Okay.
know where that came up.
It's on the
No.
Okay.
Where that came up.
It's on
no.
the agenda.
It's not on the agenda, not on my agenda. Are we meeting?
It's not on the agenda paper that we have, but when you go to Pitkin County, it shows planning and zoning and BOCC meeting at 4:00.
Oh, interesting. No, not unless it's a surprise. It's not something that I'm aware of. But
Okay,
Kelly and
thanks.
Steve, maybe you can help Francie with access to the CCI agendas and stuff, because you two would be receiving it. So maybe there's a
Well,
good.
Yeah, I was able to do it last time. This time, I don't know what happened. What?
Okay.
it can be tricky. If you just do a search for Katie first, and she'll send out links to the meetings, and then she usually puts the link to the packets for the different committee meetings. And
Okay,
that's
I was
how I
doing
did it the last time.
Okay, good to know. I was doing my search for CCI and getting a whole lot of stuff, but not what I needed.
Okay.
It's harder if you go to the CCI website. You can find it there, but it's not user friendly to find it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
All right, worth a
I'll
try.
be at the next one for sure.
So real quick, while we're waiting for Abby to come on, John, I just want clarification about the library board appointment, because we got a thing from Basalt Library. They're in need of a new appointment to represent Pitkin County on Basalt Library District. And then we have one coming up on our agenda for an interview for a library person. I don't know if that fulfills Basalt, or
I will double check with
we
Shirley.
can, because I want to see if we can move forward with getting some interviews set up for Basalt Library, because they seem to want somebody sooner than later, like in a couple weeks. Okay, I printed it out if you want to see it, John.
Sure.
I'll give it
Hey,
to
I
you.
thought we did that. I thought we had delegated to commissioners to make that appointment.
We had in the past, it was George and Steve, I believe. So,
Needs to come back to the.
for approval, but they did the interviews, I
Right.
think. So we'll figure that out. Kelly, thanks for reminding me of that. All right, so now do we have Abby available? Abby Cheney is going to do a COVID employee thank you recognition videos.
And I will let you know we were going to use the 30-minute break schedule to test the videos. It may take a little bit of time here, but I think it'll run smoothly.
And I'll just note for the board, and Abby, hopefully I'm not stepping on your toes here, but you know, March does mark the 2-year anniversary, and I believe the data was, this was, I believe, the first full day of the ski area closures, if we look back 2 years from today. And so we are marking that with thank yous to our employees. We have rolled out a website in both English and Spanish. And I think, Abby, are you going to be working from the website? So you get to see that a little bit. And videos, which there's a lot of contribution to note our appreciation for the extra effort.
Okay, if we can, I don't know where, we didn't have a 30-minute break, so,
We were going to have a break at 2:30, and we were
for
going to test
15
it
minutes, but
yeah.
yeah.
I think
I
she
think-
meant 2:30.
Oh,
Yeah.
2 30-minute breaks. We like that, that's kind of like an hour.
Abby, if you just want to go ahead and share your screen, and if any shooting is needed.
We'll
I'm
figure it out,
here.
Abby, we're good.
Sure thing.
And welcome, Abby.
Thank you. Thanks all for having me. I know I've met most of you over Zoom. I know I haven't met you, Steve. It's nice to meet you. Can you all see my screen okay?
Yes, we can.
You can? Okay. Well, let's see. Volume might be a whole different issue, but we're about to find out. Yeah, if I haven't met you, Steve, haven't met anybody on here, my name is Abby. I've been working for the county a little over a year now. And I am the project manager of this campaign. And like John said, you know, this campaign was meant to just really acknowledge the change and the struggle that the pandemic brought. And yeah, just taking time to thank Pitkin County employees. And you all know that responding to this pandemic was an enormous effort by everyone. So we just wanted to recognize those stories, big and small. So here's the landing page that we created. This is just a good landing point for testimonials, the videos, as well as some photos. So I'll start the video now and just speak up if you can't hear it.
Thank you, Pickens County employees.
We hear it okay?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
We can hear it.
it's you. We can hear you
Right.
loud and clear.
Gracias, empleados del condado de Pitkin.
March 2022 marks the 2-year anniversary of living and working through this pandemic. We just recently, in February, reached a point where we could sunset our public health orders and emergency declaration. Now is a time for us all to stop and reflect and celebrate the excellent public service working together we provided.
Before the pandemic, you kept the community functioning, safe, and thriving. And during the pandemic, your work mattered even more as the community's needs intensified.
Wow, can you believe it? March 2022 marks 2 years of living through the pandemic and 2 years of you continuing to serve the community.
We all faced constant uncertainty, made endless sacrifices and compromises, and it took each of you to keep the organization and community going.
We want to stop, reflect, and celebrate the sheer excellence of Pickens County employees in persevering through it all. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone whose job changed in small or big ways. You stood up vaccine clinics, you directed traffic, you managed volunteers, you handed out PPE,
Handled an unprecedented number of visitors and permit applications, navigated changing federal, state, and local regulations, revised, explained, and defended numerous public health orders, all while doing the same thing you've been doing for years.
Thanks for doing what needed to be done, even if you weren't asked directly. You took care of it.
Thank you for continuing to take care of the usual work, but under unusual circumstances for the past 2 years.
For keeping the roads plowed, the lights on, and the facilities clean. Even if this meant full shifts in PPE and the fear of getting sick.
You diverted waste out of the landfill and kept the phones and the internet working throughout the county. You kept our facilities open. You were the ones ensuring the cleanliness and the safety of our buildings. You were still here while a significant portion of staff worked from home.
You ensured that people were still able to travel to and from Pickens County safely. You made sure the airport was clean and that people were following the federal travel guidelines.
You processed permits and licenses so people could get married, drive cars, build and renovate homes.
And you managed trails during an explosion of outdoor recreation that included an exponential increase in usage.
You ensured fair and accurate elections with integrity. You even made sure our paychecks got cut to and sent to us.
We want to thank the Human Services staff for showing up every day and taking care of the community while so many people in our county struggled with financial security, housing, childcare, food security, and mental health.
Our staff processed millions of dollars worth of economic assistance to keep vulnerable kids, adults, and older adults safe and secure. You all found incredible ways to provide other assistance through home visits, distributing food, emergency assistance, and so much more.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming together as a team to keep services going when individuals were out sick,
caring for others, or attempting to work at home on Zoom while helping children with online schooling.
You were the ones that made the technology possible for our employees and teams, and all during unprecedented turnover. I can't thank you enough for your service.
Thank you for keeping the community safe. You keep 911 dispatch on point. You continue to protect the community when tensions were high and people were struggling. Thank you so much.
On the bright side, our community has solid evidence that our county employees do important work. They do it well with uncommon leadership, resilience, and grit.
The past 2 years have been hard and have only further confirmed that our county employees do important work and do it well.
We are proud and thankful to work with you.
Speaking as a commissioner, as chairman of the Board of Health, and for the citizens of this valley, I'm honored to say that we are proud of all of you and that we are immensely thankful to be on the same amazing team in Pickens County. Thank you.
We are proud and thankful to work with you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
The past 2 years have been hard. We couldn't have done it without you. Thank you.
Marzo del 2022 marca 2 años viviendo a través de una pandemia y 2 años de continuar sirviendo a la comunidad. Gracias a cada uno de ustedes cuyo trabajo cambió en formas pequeñas o grandes. Cada uno de ustedes siguió con su trabajo habitual, pero en circunstancias inusuales. Gracias por cuidar de la comunidad mientras tanta gente en nuestro condado luchaba. Gracias por brindar un excelente servicio al cliente y mantener segura a la comunidad y a la organización. Gracias por todo lo que han dado y siguen dando. Todos estamos orgullosos y agradecidos por cada uno de ustedes y el trabajo que continúan haciendo.
All right, you got me.
Well done.
That's so nice.
Great job.
Thank you all, and thank you all for taking the time and sitting on Google Meet with me and telling me your stories. And on that note too, there was a lot of kind of extra, stories and thank yous from leadership that I didn't want to leave out. So I did take it upon myself to make kind of an extra shorter thank you from leadership. So if you guys have time afterwards and want to kind of peruse the site, you can watch that as well. There's some awesome remarks from extra leadership and BOCC. Next, just on the site, we have different testimonials and stories from employees. So yeah, I just encourage everyone to look at it at their own time and just take time to read the thank yous and the statements of appreciation. And that's the campaign. Thank you so much for your time and for listening and for your attention.
So again, Abby, how can the public, how can our employees access this site just clearly so everybody knows how to find it?
Yeah, so this is an entirely internal campaign for the employees. So we will be having posters posted around the admin building with QR codes to scan to visit the site. This will also be featured in the employee newsletter. So those are two accessible avenues to access all this content.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've been sharing this also. I'm doing manager chats. I did one this morning. I'll be doing one again tomorrow. And this is really an opportunity for us to look back and reflect and process the last 2 years. Clearly, there's some of that still needs to be done. And it's also an opportunity for us to look forward. When you go on the site, you'll also see our announcements and sign up an RSVP for employee listening sessions to talk about how we move forward and build back even better.
I think this is a great idea, a great campaign, and if anything, our employees have been amazing, and we want to do whatever we can help for the county as a whole. And it starts here with us. It's public servants to the county to move on and see what our next new norm might be. The board have any comments they'd like to share? Kelly, please.
Are we going to plan an in-person employee appreciation party?
John and I have been talking about it, and if anything, I'll promise this board, John will talk about it and I will help plan it with other members of staff. Just so everybody's safe on that one. Thanks, Kelly. We're working. John, I've just started talking about it.
So yeah, Kelly, I think that, and also we're talking about how to celebrate with the community at some point too.
Okay, anything else from the board? Francie, do you have your hand up I see there?
No, I don't, but I would like to say thank you to Abby, and it was fun meeting you when we did our little thing.
Thank you, Francie.
And Abby's got quite the collection hanging on her wall back there. I didn't know you were into the music. Steve, please.
So, Abby, I'm sorry that the day we were going to meet, I was sicker than a dog that day. And that was typical. Out of the 2 years of the pandemic, I was sick at least half the time. And I hope I'm well forever now at this point, but I'm sorry I missed the opportunity to do the video.
No, it's okay. Thank you for watching, for listening.
It was fun, Steve. Abby's a lot of fun. So, Greg, please.
Yeah, thank you. I think it turned out great. It's fun to watch, and it's great to see everyone in there. And it's wonderful to see what you did with it. I did want to ask, is that a banjo on the wall behind you, or is it a Japanese koto or something? It's a banjo?
Yeah.
It's a what?
It's an electric banjo.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Cool.
Well, the next video, you've got to do the soundtrack.
I know, now we know who's going to be entertaining us at our parties. All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
We
so
look
much.
forward to working with you more.
Thank you.
Okay, and I see we have Suzanne Wolf here in person. And Suzanne's going to help us decide on, or hopefully suggest, the number of members we would like to see on our Planning and Zoning Volunteer Commission.
So I know you had a conversation last week with some of the P&Z, and I don't know that anybody was planning to jump in today. I hadn't really spoken to any of them about joining us. But I think right now, obviously, as Cindy mentioned, 2 members have just resigned, which leaves us with 7. We have 3 people who are up for renewal. I believe all 3 are applying to renew, but we have advertised. But I think the message that I understand from the P&Z was they think 7 is more than adequate. Right now, the bylaws provide for any more than 3 and up to 9. I think everybody feels like 9 has not been necessary. We've had 8 at times, and then that makes it more complicated because we still need 5 people for a quorum, whether it's 8 or 9. With 7, it's a quorum of 4. That seems manageable for everyone. I know there was discussion about that at one time there had been 5 voting members and 2 alternates, and I don't know if you were on the P&Z at that time or not,
I was
Patty.
an alternate.
My vague recollection, and again, we're talking, it goes back a ways, was that we got rid of that because the alternates, if you showed up and the 5 voting members were there wasn't a whole lot of incentive for you to stay and participate because you weren't voting.
I always stayed regardless. So.
Yeah, I mean, again, that was just my sort of recollection is that, if you're not voting, what's your level of participation? Does that affect it or not? We would have to change the bylaws if we wanted to go back to, that kind of, I think, a scenario of a number of voting members plus alternates, rather than saying we have 7, that's a quorum of 4, and we work with whichever 4 make it, I guess with only 5 voting members, you'd have a smaller quorum. Again, I haven't figured, I don't know how all that works. But I know we had that and we changed it to just have X number of members.
I personally think that 7 is the right number and let them all vote, since we have 7 people now and we have 3 that are reapplying that we will need to interview.
Right, they just, I think Charlotte's, thing to them just went out yesterday.
Yeah, we have some time reserved on our work sessions. For me, if we have 5 and the quorum's 3, I think having 3 people make decisions, I'd like to see a little more input. So I would be comfortable going back to the 7 with all members voting. And then that allows us to re-interview the 3 that are reapplying and go from there. So how does the rest of the board feel about that? Steve, please.
I would agree to leave it at 7, and I would even change the bylaws to lower it from 9 to 7 if that's possible and not too difficult, because it seems like, based on the feedback, that 9 was just simply unwieldy, and we do not want to have 9 on there. And I also think not having the alternates, I'm fine with that. Just have everybody be a voting person, because that gives, like Suzanne said, a better incentive to be there and participate.
Okay, and Steve, I don't know if we necessarily need to change the 9, unless we feel that a future board may go to 9, but 9 doesn't mean we have to go to 9. It means we can if we see the need to. And we may find that in the future, we're not having enough attendance. We just know how things to change. So if we leave it the way it is, it just gives us the opportunity. Doesn't mean we have to go to 9. So any other comments from the board? Are we comfortable with 7 with all voting? I think that was easy. easier. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Suzanne.
Thanks.
So now, we gave 30 minutes for that discussion. I'm impressed. We're very expeditious. So now we have open discussion.
Yeah. Whoops, thanks, Patty. So I do have an answer on the library board appointment. The interview is actually for Pickens County Library. If you could forward Amy Shipley's email when you get a chance, Patty, we will get in touch with BOCC through Charlotte and
Okay.
get that process started.
Okay.
And then I moved away from my electronic brain here, so give me just a second.
Did I hand you that copy I had, Joe?
Yes, you did.
So-
Actually, I can, oh, it's got it on here.
We can just
send
give it
her.
to Charlotte
Mhm.
upstairs too, because I'm like, what did I do with it? So then we will be, Charlotte will bring us up to speed as to how we process the Basalt Library appointment, who's been the ones involved, and then how it comes back to us. So Charlotte knows that, and we'll trust Charlotte to get us in the right direction.
Yeah, and then during future agendas, I misspoke. Jeanette did send out an email, but it was to me and John Ely to talk about scheduling the Bavarian site visit. So I did just forward an email to the board asking for board members who would like to do the Bavarian site visit, and then suggesting a few days either in the 5th week of March or 1st week of April, ahead of April 13th. We can either discuss that now, or if you just want to work it through email, we can do it that way.
Well, I think the main concern for me was to get Francie up there. Francie, if you want to jump on that and send some dates, and then we'll make sure it's a date when you can be available. And if the rest.
Well, I'll be back Monday, the 28th. I mean, I'll really be back the 27th, but I'll be back Monday, the 28th. And how far away is it? How long does it take to get there?
Kelly, how long does it take to get up there? Half an hour up Castle Creek?
I don't even think that long.
Yeah.
From the roundabout, it's a ways.
Yeah, from the roundabout is 15.
It could take us 4 hours from the roundabout, so we might want to.
That's what I was going
From
to
the
say.
roundabout. in Castle Creek.
Yeah.
Assuming you're through the roundabout.
Yeah.
And Francie, I had suggested some Thursdays in there, kind of thinking about you, because we typically have an agenda meeting where I think you've been trying to travel up.
Yeah, come up in the early afternoon and go up there.
Yeah, let me check because Thursdays, let's see, we've got Wolves next week, so that means we don't have them for another month. So
If you could just send some dates to Jeanette.
Thursday, the
Jeanette,
31st is good for me.
Thursday, the 31st, so John's writing that down, so does that sound okay with everybody else? I don't know what CCI is doing.
And the 7th. It looks like both of those are okay.
And the following week, the Thursday, okay. So that gives us a little bit of flex, so.
I can only do the 7th.
And I can only do the 31st.
And Steve's gonna do
You've already been.
Steve's gonna do the 30th and the 6th.
Now,
I could do Mondays too. What about you guys?
So Monday,
And-
the 3rd?
It would be
28th
4th
or the 3rd. I could do either of those.
Both of those are out for you, Greg? Well, you know what, I'm gonna send these
Yeah,
dates
that's spring
on.
break. I'm gone.
Let's send these dates on, and
So-
again, the priority is because Francie has not seen the property at all. Greg, have you seen it at all?
I know the property fairly well, I've been up there. So I'd say send out the doodle poll or whatever, and if I can see a spot, I'll mark my
Okay.
spot.
Okay.
Don't worry about me.
Okay, look for a follow-up email, and you can ignore the first one I sent then.
Okay, so we've got that, John. Anything else? And
That's all I have for you.
does the board have any open discussion? Kelly?
I just want to congratulate the Aspen High School men's basketball team on their state championship. What an incredible season. And I really enjoyed sort of following their story and just congratulate them on their hard work and success. Very exciting.
first time in history that they have brought back a state championship. So there are lots of generations of Aspen High School basketball players who are extremely proud of the achievement of this year's basketball team at Aspen High School. I think it's pretty cool. 27-0, they pulled it off, and they did so with great grace and sportsmanship and pride, and something this entire community, this entire valley needs to and should be proud of. So Kelly, thank you for bringing that up. Any other comments from the board, or we can sit here for another 45 minutes, or we can call it a wrap for today. Kelly. All right. So I'm going to call this meeting, and I look forward to seeing everybody. What is today? Today is the 15th. We definitely have meetings. Next week is a busy week, I think, for a lot of us. So we have regular meeting on Wednesday, and we have work session on Tuesday. And then I think a lot of us have meetings at the end of the week. That'll keep us all busy. Francie, travel safe. And Kelly, you will be out of town the next week or the following week?
Next Thursday to Monday.
Okay. All right. So you and Francie travel safe. Which I was going either
I'll
your
see you
direction.
next week.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right, board. Anything else? Greg, you're good? All right. See you guys. Have a good weekend. Be safe out there. Have a good week, I should say. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Grassroots. Thank you, McKellar. And thank you, John.